Have you ever noticed something about AI writing?
Hmm.
Even with all the excitement about it, the creative stuff seems kind of samey.
Oh, you mean like it's all kind of predictable.
Exactly. It's like you've read it all before, just with different words. It's technically good, but not very surprising.
Ah, I see what you mean. That's a really sharp observation, actually. It's like it's missing that spark, that truly original idea.
Right. And that's what we're diving into today. We're looking at a paper called, get this, Modifying Large Language Model Post-Training for Diverse Creative Writing.
Now, that's a mouthful, but it sounds right up our alley.
It is. It's all about how to make AI writing more diverse and exciting, especially after the initial training phase.
So, post training is when we fine tune these models, right, to make them better at following instructions and generating high quality text.
Yeah, but the researchers found a kind of weird problem with that.
What's that?
It seems the better the model gets at writing, the less diverse its outputs become.
Oh, interesting. It's like it learns the right way to write and then gets stuck in a rut.
Exactly. It plays it safe and sticks to what it knows works, but that doesn't help us if we want truly creative content.
Makes sense. We don't want AI just churning out the same old stories. We want it to help us explore new ideas.
Absolutely. So the researchers came up with these two really cool methods to address this. They call them DDPO and DORPO.
EDPO, DORPO, they sound like robot names, but I'm all ears.
I know, right? But they're actually really interesting. Diversified direct preference optimization and diversified odds ratio preference optimization.
Okay, those names is definitely a mouthful, but what do they actually do? How do they make the AI more creative?
That's what we're going to break down in this deep dive. We're going to figure out how these new techniques could lead to AI that can really surprise us with its creativity.
I'm ready to be surprised. But before we get into the specifics, let's talk about why diversity is so important for creative AI in the first place.
You're right, that's a great starting point. It's not like solving a math problem where there's one right answer.
Exactly. In creative writing, there are endless possibilities, and that's what makes it so interesting.
The researchers actually referenced some classic research on this, like creative writing isn't about finding the correct answer. It's about exploring all sorts of different ideas and perspectives.
That reminds me of the idea of divergent thinking, that ability to come up with a wide range of ideas instead of just focusing on one.
Right. And the researchers connect that directly to creative AI. They say that a truly creative AI needs to be able to think divergently, to explore lots of different paths.
So, what happens when AI lacks that diversity? What are the practical downsides?
Well, imagine everyone using the same AI tools and ending up with basically the same stories or poems.
Oh, that would be so boring. No originality at all.
Exactly. It's like that dog on the moon story we talked about before. If everyone's AI is writing the same cliche story, what's the point?
And it's not just about being boring. The researchers say that limited diversity can also lead to bias in the AI's output.
Oh, right, because it might only be trained on a narrow set of examples, so it could end up reflecting those biases in its writing.
Exactly. It could overrepresent certain themes or styles while completely ignoring others. And that's not what we want from AI. We want it to help us broaden our creative horizons.
So we've got this problem. We want AI to write well, but we also want it to be diverse and original. But it seems like those two goals are at odds with each other.
Yeah, that's the puzzle the researchers are trying to solve. And it's trickier than it seems. We already have techniques for improving the quality of AI writing.
Like DPO and ORPO, right? We've talked about those before. They're all about making the writing smoother, more coherent, and better at following instructions.
Yes, but here's the catch. Those methods often lead to less diversity in the output. It's almost like the AI is so focused on getting things right that it stops exploring new possibilities.
So it's a trade-off. We can have quality or we can have diversity, but it's tough to get both. There have been some attempts to force diversity, like messing with the prompts or tweaking the temperature setting.
Right, I've heard about those, but they often backfire, right? You might get more variety, but the writing quality goes down the drain. It's like trying to force creativity and it just ends up sounding weird.
Exactly. So the researchers needed a new approach, and that's where this idea of deviation comes in. This is their big innovation.
Deviation, huh? That sounds intriguing. So how do they define it?
Well, it's basically a measure of how different a particular piece of writing is from other pieces generated from the same prompt.
So if you give the AI a prompt like, write a story about a cat that goes to space, it'll spit out a bunch of stories. And the deviation measures how different each story is from the others.
Exactly. It's not just about being different in any random way. It's about being distinct within the context of that specific prompt.
That makes sense. But how do you actually measure something like that? How do you quantify the difference between two creative texts?
That's the clever part. They use these things called embedding models, which turn text into a bunch of numbers.
Numbers. How can numbers represent something as complex as a story?
Well, these aren't just any numbers. They're vectors that capture the meaning and style of the text. Like one model they use focuses on the semantic differences the meaning of the words, and how they relate to each other.
Okay, so that's for like, is it a story about adventure or romance?
Right. And then they use another model that focuses on style differences, like is the writing formal or casual, poetic or straightforward?
Ah, so they're looking at both what the AI is saying and how it's saying it.
Yep. And then they use a fancy math trick called cosine distance to calculate how similar or different those vectors are.
So a high cosine distance means the stories are very different, right?
You got it. So the higher the deviation score, the more unique and original that piece of writing is compared to the others.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. They've got a way to measure how different the AI's output is, but how do they actually use that to train the AI? That's where DDPO and DORPO come in, right?
Right on. So both of these methods build on existing techniques like DPO and ORPO, but they add this new element of deviation.
So DPO is all about learning from preferences, right? Like the AI gets feedback on which outputs are better than others.
Exactly. And DDPO takes that a step further when it finds a response that's both high quality and highly deviant.
It gives it extra weight during training, right?
You got it. It's like saying, hey, AI, this is good, but it's also really original, so pay attention to this.
Like a gold star plus a bonus point for creativity.
I like that. And DORPO does something similar, but it uses a slightly different mathematical approach.
But the key is, both methods are encouraging the AI to explore less common creative paths as long as they still lead to good writing.
It's like instead of just rewarding the AI student for good grammar and spelling, you're also rewarding them for coming up with truly unique ideas.
It's like saying, don't just rehash the classics, give me something new.
Okay, so that's the theory. But did it actually work? What happened when they put these methods to the test?
Well, they ran a bunch of experiments using real creative writing prompts and human written responses from Reddit.
From Reddit, so like actual people's creative writing, not just stuff made up in a lab.
Yeah, which is really cool because it's more representative of how people actually use language creatively. And to measure how well the AI was doing, they used two main things.
Hit me with them.
First, they trained a separate model to predict how likely a piece of writing was to get upvotes on Reddit. They called this Reddit reward and used it as a stand-in for how much humans liked the writing.
So like the more upvotes, the better the writing is assumed to be? Makes sense. What was the other measure?
They used those embedding models we talked about earlier to calculate diversity scores. Basically, they looked at how different the AI's outputs were from each other, both in terms of meaning and style.
Okay, so they had ways to measure both quality and diversity. And, drum roll please.
The results were really promising. Both DDPO and DORPO led to significantly higher diversity scores compared to the standard methods. And we're not talking about small improvements. These were substantial gains in originality.
Wow, that's exciting. But what about quality? Did the writing get worse as it got more diverse?
That's the best part. The increase in diversity came with only a tiny dip in quality, and sometimes the quality even stayed the same or got slightly better.
So they actually managed to achieve both goals, more creative and still good quality.
Exactly. They really hit that sweet spot.
Did they compare their results to other state-of-the-art language models? You know, the big names in AI writing?
Oh, yeah, they did. They compared their best models against heavy hitters like GPT-4o, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and DeepSeek-R1.
And how did they stack up?
Get this, the models trained with DDPO and DORPO actually achieved higher diversity scores than all those fancy models while keeping the quality similar.
Seriously, they beat out the top dogs in diversity? That's impressive.
Yeah. They even tried prompting GPT-4o to be more diverse, but it still couldn't match the diversity of the DDPO and DORPO models.
That's wild. It really shows that the training method itself makes a huge difference. But did real people actually like the more diverse writing?
That's a good question. To find out, they ran a human evaluation study where people compared stories generated by different methods.
So they had humans judging the AI, not just other AI models. I like it. What do the humans think?
Well, they generally preferred the stories from the DDPO model, both in terms of quality and diversity. They found them more original and interesting than the stories from the other methods.
So the human agreed in the numbers. DDPO really does lead to more creative and engaging writing. It wasn't just a fluke in the metrics.
Exactly. That's a pretty solid confirmation. But they didn't stop there. They also looked at how the amount of training data affected the results.
Oh, that's interesting. Because getting tons of diverse training data can be really difficult and expensive.
Right. So they wanted to see if DDPO could still work its magic even with less data. And it turns out it can.
Even with a smaller data set, it still boosted diversity. That's good news for practical applications.
Yep. They did find that the quality might dip a bit with very little data, but they came up with some clever workarounds for that.
Nice. Like what?
Well, they found that setting a minimum threshold for the deviation score or focusing on using only the highest quality examples during training can help preserve the quality even when data is scarce.
So they're already thinking about how to make this work in the real world where data can be limited. That's smart. Didn't they also compare DDPO to another method for boosting diversity, something called DivPO?
They did, and they found that DDPO generally achieved higher diversity than DivPO while maintaining similar quality.
So it's a winner on both counts.
And there's another bonus. DDPO uses all the available data during training, while DivPO throws some of it away. So DDPO might be more efficient, especially when you don't have a ton of data to work with.
That's a big plus. Sounds like DDPO is a real game changer for AI creative writing. What do the researchers think are the big takeaways from this work?
Well, they see this research as a major step towards creating AI that's truly creatively intelligent.
It's not just about mimicking human writing, it's about having AI contribute something new and original.
Exactly. They're hoping this will lead to AI tools that can help us break free from creative ruts and explore completely new ideas.
That's the dream, right? To have AI that can truly spark our imaginations and push us in new directions.
And they have some exciting ideas for future research. They want to see if these methods can work in online learning settings where the AI is constantly learning from new data.
That would be amazing. So the AI could keep getting more creative over time.
Yep. They also want to see what these ideas can be applied to other creative tasks, like or art generation. Imagine AI composing truly original pieces of music, unlike anything we've ever heard before.
Now, that's a future I want to live in. So just to wrap things up, what's the key innovation here?
It all comes down to this deviation thing. By measuring and rewarding originality during the post-training phase, the researchers found a way to make AI writing significantly more diverse and creative without sacrificing quality.
And that means a whole new world of possibilities for anyone who uses AI for creative writing.
Imagine AI tools that can offer you a much wider range of creative ideas, helping you break out of your comfort zone and explore uncharted narrative territories.
No more boring, predictable AI outputs. We're talking about AI that can really surprise and inspire us. Makes you wonder, if AI could be this creative, what else is it capable of?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's one we're going to keep exploring right here on the Deep Dive.
If you're interested in learning more about this research, we highly recommend checking out the original paper. It's called Modifying Large Language Model Post-Training for Diverse Creative Writing by Chung and their colleagues.
It's a fascinating read for anyone who wants to dive deeper into the technical details. And for those of you who are just curious about the future of AI and creativity, stick with us. We're just getting started.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more exciting research to explore. Until then, keep those creative sparks flying.